XOmniverse, you bring up a frequently discussed topic on discussion boards, the issue of whether Rand was somehow philosophically inconsistent or logically inconsistent in not being an anarchist. So just for everyone's benefit, let's just set out the basics. Rand believed that all relations between individuals in society should be consensual, and that coercive physical force should be used only in a defensive manner or to preempt a reasonably anticipated attack or a reasonably anticipated violation of your life, liberty, or property. Now, Rand's position on government was that government holds a monopoly on the retaliatory use of force. She would talk about, how do you know that a person is guilty? And that to know that requires a rational process of thought, a rigorous examination of the evidence, a rational examination of the evidence, and that otherwise there could be a situation where somebody who was not guilty of a crime or had not committed a wrong would be wrongly subjected to the use of coercive physical force. And Rand says that you need an impartial observer, you need a dispassionate observer, somebody to apply the law impartially, dispassionately, rationally, as an independent, non-involved person, not in a conflict of interest, not involved in the crime. Effectively, Rand is saying that if a dispassionate person who's not involved in the legal situation and who's charged with the duty of carrying out a rational examination of the evidence and an evaluation of the crime and an evaluation of the remedy, that if that happens, then the use of force will be placed under objective control. And that's what she thought should be done, and that was the role of government. I think if you examine the example she gave of a society without a government, of an anarchist society, you'll find that she usually discussed situations of remedial justice, situations where there's already been an alleged crime, and the issue is, did it occur, who did it, did they have the intent to do it, how bad was it, and what's the appropriate response in terms of remedy. Okay, so we're talking about an after-the-fact situation in almost every example she gives. As examples of a society in which there was no government, an anarchist society, she would give the examples of such things as lynch mobs, people saying, without giving anyone a trial, that so-and-so is guilty, and therefore I'm going to take it upon myself to take out my gun and shoot him, or to round him up and lynch him. Without a trial, without the benefit of proper rules of evidence, without any weighing of the evidence by an impartial observer or impartial judge. I don't remember any example in which she says, well, suppose a person's holding a gun to your head and you've got a gun in your pocket. Don't use it, wait for the police. I don't remember her ever saying anything like that. And I think it's very interesting also to note, though, that when she was asked, well then, are you in favor of gun control? She said she hadn't given it really all that much thought, but that she didn't think that gun control was at all the point. She promoted the idea that instead, it's philosophy that is going to render a society peaceful, not gun control. My recollection is, in any event, that Rand's examples of a society without a government usually or always involve remedial justice. Justice being administered after the fact, force being applied after force has been abused. And rather not, I can't remember any situation she raised in the context of an anarchistic society or a governmentless society in which she's discussing, what do you do if someone's about to violate your life, your liberty, or your property? I don't recall an example being given like that. Now, without suggesting that Rand said this, I think she would find it morally righteous for you to defend your life, your liberty, and your property from abuse when the police aren't available, when the government's not available, to do it for you. And that to just sit idly by and allow someone to violate your life, your liberty, or your property would be contrary to everything that is right and just in her philosophy. Now, the anarchist would say, well, because the government is taxing me, it's abusing force. It's taking from me without my consent. And therefore, it's an agent everywhere and always of force. Abusive physical force. And therefore, government can do no right. Because it's taxing to do everything it does. It takes money without my consent. It takes my money without my consent. Makes decisions without my approval on every fine point. Yet those decisions affect me. So the anarchist says no. And some anarchists say, well, and Ayn Rand should be agreeing with me. However, I think that there's a reason why the, guilt by virtue of taxing me argument doesn't hold water. Let's consider what a government is. It's a group of individuals. Individuals that are also governed. They're just like you and me because they might be you and me. And they're elected into office, but that doesn't change the fact that they're human beings. It doesn't change morality at all. It doesn't change reality. It doesn't change the nature of the way a person knows things. So, what Rand had said that government gets its power by the consent of the governed. And that's an old idea. It was an idea that Hobbes and Locke and Rousseau all agreed with, that there's this social contract of sorts. Now, I'm not saying that Rand agreed with the social contract idea, but implicit in the idea that, government gets its power by the consent of the governed is the idea that there's a consent to something, a consent to do something, an agency arrangement, or a delegation of powers. Now, but consider this, is a delegation even necessary? And I'm not speaking on behalf of Rand here, I'm speaking on behalf of myself. My own thinking on this is as follows. That if I want, let's say that you're sitting there and there's a gun to your head, and I've got a gun in my pocket, and you're helpless, and the police aren't around, the government's not around. Do I'm talking in terms of morality now, not in terms of legality. Do I, as a matter of morality, have to ask your permission to shoot the person who's about to take your life without your consent? I don't think there's any moral obligation for me to ask your permission. I don't need your consent to take out a killer before he kills, a murderer before he murders. Similarly, I don't think I need your permission to prevent a person from stealing your property. I say stealing, I'm implying that you did not consent to your property being taken away. Nor do I think I need your permission to stop a person from violating your liberty. Because again, it wouldn't be a violation if you consented to it. So we're assuming here in all cases, life, liberty, and property, that you have not consented to someone taking your life, violating your liberty, violating your property. In all those situations, I don't really need your permission to take out the violator. Morally speaking, I'm on safe ground, even under Rand's objectivist morality, I would submit, to take out the murderer, the thief, the enslaver, using whatever force is necessary to do so. Well, in a sense, I'm performing what she would regard as a governmental function at that point. I don't think I need your permission, so do I really need to permit anybody else to perform the role of protecting my life, liberty, and property? I would submit no. Now, there is a logistical issue, and that is who is going to be identified as a person who is in fact dispassionate and who is in fact rational and qualified to perform the function of knowing what is defense and knowing what is justice. And ultimately, Rand, I believe, would say, well, you can elect people to perform that function. I don't think Rand was quite right to conclude that the power exercised by the government is somehow transferred to it by other individuals. There's no power per se. There's only right and wrong. Government's either doing right or it's doing wrong. And so you don't really transfer right or wrong. Right or wrong exists independently of any transfer. You don't need to delegate right or wrong. It exists independently of any transfer. You don't need to consent to someone doing what's morally right. So there's no need, again, to delegate or transfer. There needs to be order in the sense that, you know, we know who it is that's going to deal remedially with force. And to that end, we elect people and we appoint judges, or we have those people appoint judges, or we elect judges in some jurisdictions. But in any event, that's just identification of people who are trusted to, rightly or wrongly, they're trusted to exercise rational judgment in the use of force of physical force. And they wear all the badges and cloaks and gowns and etc. to identify them as the people who have been identified as having that capacity, that skill, and that obligation not to act in a conflict of interest with respect to that duty. Not, for example, to judge their own case. But now, why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we just do away with government and say, you know what, since I can defend myself, I can also administer justice. I can, after the fact, after someone's stolen my property, I can march over there with a gun and grab it back. Or I can, after someone has enslaved me and I've been somehow set free, I can then put that person in a cage for a while. And why would it be wrong under Rand's philosophy to do that? Why would that be inconsistent with Rand's philosophy? Well, because I'm very partial, aren't I? I'm the victim. I'm the person who's been abused. I'm hardly seeing this through untinted glasses. There's a great risk, in comparison to some uninvolved person, that I will not act rationally. That I will be tempted to act irrationally. And so as a check and balance on that, and I think it's a realistic one, we expect dispassionate, uninvolved folks who aren't in a conflict of interest to evaluate the evidence, evaluate the punishment and the crime, and etc. But we can't expect people to do that for free now, can we? We don't want to enslave the judges and the police and etc. Those people who are spending their time and their effort thinking through the evidence, you know, weighing the evidence, weighing the penalty, weighing the crime, doing the physical task of carrying an accused person from one place to another, or putting them in a cage. They can't be expected to do that for free, and we can't morally expect them to do that for free. We owe them compensation for what they do. We can't expect them to give a value without receiving a value in exchange. And since we have an obligation to use force only justly, and since we're incapable, if we are the victim, of, you know, dispassionately and rationally evaluating the evidence, weighing the crime, weighing the penalty, it's morally right for us to delegate to someone who's not involved, a dispassionate third person, to delegate to that person the duties of rationally weighing the evidence, etc. But we can't expect them to do it for free. We can't expect them to provide us with that value, that judgment, and etc., that exercise of mental evaluation for free. Yet we are bound by our own moral code to rationally evaluate the evidence before applying force in a defensive or retaliatory way. So because our morality requires us to do that, and because we can't do that, because we require other people to do it for us, we are by implication required to compensate them for that service. That, I think, is the basis, and that's my submission. I don't think I've read it anywhere else, so I'll claim credit or be damned for it. But I would submit that that is the reason why taxation of a minimally intrusive sort, or at least government revenue collection, I want to put it in the most vague way, is morally justifiable when it's solely for the purpose of carrying out that duty of ensuring justice prevails. I'm not suggesting that revenue collection by the government for just anything it wants to do is justified. Again, I want to make it clear that Rand did not propose taxation as consistent with her moral code, and she did not provide the explanation I'm proposing for why taxation might be consistent with her philosophy. I take full credit and I take full penalty for the logical consistency or illogical nature of that theory. I'm looking forward to your response on that, and in particular my theory on the morality of taxation, because I know that it's something that Rand really never dealt with. She left it to the lawyers, I think, and incidentally, I am a lawyer, but she left it to the lawyers, I believe, to figure out what would be a good system of making sure that government had the money it needed to carry out its functions. But I don't think she went very far toward explaining why, as a matter of morality, revenue collection or the payment to government, or the collection of money by government, is consistent with her morality. And I think that's why she's opened up the possibility of an argument that she was not consistent with respect to her philosophy and her own claim that government holds a monopoly on the use of force and should.